I think what he had expressed is that he knows he betrayed their trust. I think that's the line he actually used.
How do you feel about the fact that no one at this point else has been charged with anything related to count one, sex crime?
I'm disappointed. I think I have a particular insight into that case. I think I've made my thoughts clear in my sentencing memo, but just to expand on that, I think we expect the federal government to take on the hard cases and not just the easy convictions. Mr. Greenberg falls in the latter. I mean, his conduct was obvious and it was blatant. It's not an easy case. It's shooting fish in a barrel. What's really going to test the mettle of our Justice Department and our democracy is their fortitude in pursuing others who are above them.
Who do you feel should be pursued at this point?
Who do I think, other than you? I'm not at liberty. That was a joke. I'm not at liberty to say. So, but say, I'm sorry.
Since you filed that sentencing memo where you basically questioned whether the Department of Justice was going to take further action, have you learned anything additional in the last week, or would you still write that same memo today when it came to those?
I would write the same memo today, even if I get audited. You know.
In that memo, you mentioned that your client is still cooperating with investigations, including in Washington, D.C.
I'm going to have to put these on. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Including in Washington, D.C. Could you talk? What can you tell us about those investigations? Is that referring to an investigation into Congressman Gaetz?
Okay, let me, if I can deconstruct that for a minute. You're talking about my comments yesterday about the two.
In the memo, you mentioned that he's still cooperating in ongoing investigations, and one of those you mentioned Washington, D.C.
Right. Okay. So, and then yesterday I said there's two other indictments coming. So that's local. Pursuant to his plea agreement, he's going to continue to cooperate in all investigations, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or Seminole County or Broward County or Tallahassee.
You said after one of the hearings that you didn't think Matt Gaetz would be feeling very comfortable at that point. At this point, with this case done now, people like Matt Gaetz or other people connected to that situation, do you think they'd be more comfortable now than they were?
I honestly don't know. I don't have, I'd love to answer that. I mean, I'd love to give you more clarity, but I don't know, So I don't know where the status is on those investigations.
Please excuse us, we're journalists.
I'm sorry?
I said, please excuse us, we're journalists. He got 11 years, but it looks like he's already served about 2 of those 11 years.
Yes. So, and then under the Department of Bureau of Prisons, he'll probably get serve 85%. So generally, if you take 11 years, you times it by 2, that's another 22 months. And you add it to the 2 years, so he'll probably be serving a little bit over 6 years.
You mentioned you basically mentioned in court that he's destitute at this point.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's paying significant restitution to Seminole County and others. Do you mind if I ask, how is he paying that? Is that family members?
No, he already paid Seminole County.
Right.
So he's going to be responsible for the restitution on the SBA loans going forward.
Is that coming from him or
no,
family?
it's not going to be from family members. It's going to be him.
Proceeds from the sale of his house?
Yes, I identified that's part of it, yes. Yeah.
You talked about his mental health as being a mitigating factor. How much of a role do you think that played in him committing these crimes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you look at the impulsivity of it and the blatantness of it, I do think it played a factor in it.
Is there a possibility? I think you guys mentioned this yesterday in the hearing about further reduction in time while in prison if he continues to cooperate with investigations?
Yes, that is under Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 35. I think my argument, if you look at the statistics, Rule 35 is not a preferred method. They're rarely given. But if he does continue to cooperate, he would be eligible. So, my whole goal in the case was getting as big of a 5K as I could, and not leaving it to a Rule 35. I think there's a 2016 study from the Sentencing Commission that talks about the disparity in sentencing between districts that rely on Rule 35s as opposed to 5Ks. Unfortunately, the Middle District of Florida relies on this hybrid system of 5Ks and Rule 35s. And I think if you look at the national statistics, the end result is defendants in the Middle District tend to get lower reductions than other districts, such as New York, that rely primarily on 5Ks.
Forgive me if you answered this before I walk over here, but what does he want now? What does Mr. Greenberg want now that this part of this is over?
Well, I think he knows he has he does have a genuine sense of remorse. He is committed to assisting Seminole County through the FDLE, and that's already started. The process has already started on other investigations. You know, I think sometimes what I was concerned about, and going back to my memorandum, is that, and we're talking about other people in a higher level. I think sometimes that the prosecution of a person like Joel Greenberg gives us a sense of complacency, like everything is all right and justice has been done, right? And really, then sometimes the more culpable escape. And so it is a real false sense of security and complacency. There's an entire abyss, to cite to Paul Bowles, sheltering sky. There's a dark abyss behind Joel Greenberg, and his prosecution may give us a sheltering sky from looking into that abyss.
Bigger fish.
A lot bigger fish, yeah. See, I like that, but I like that better than my esoteric Paul Bowles thing that I struggle with.
And does that bigger fish apply to the FDLE investigation into what happened in Seminole County?
Well, yes, and the Justice Department in Washington, and hopefully the Middle District here.
You mentioned in court that your client cooperated against 8 men related to the sex crime investigation.
I'm not sure if it was 8 or 7, but
okay,
yeah.
Sorry.
No. You're probably right.
Yeah, around that number.
It's actually nice that somebody listens to what I say.
Yeah. I believe someone mentioned only Joel has been charged with sex crime. Do you expect other charges?
I do.
Related to those 8 or 7 individuals?
I do, and there should be. And I think part of my frustration is that I have a pretty good insight into the evidence in this case. I have a very good insight into the evidence in this case. And, I think what I was trying to point out, what I was frustrated about in my sentencing memo, especially with footnote 10, is, we want our Justice Department to take the hard prosecutions, right? I mean, that's what they're there for. They shouldn't be doing felon and possessions of guns and drug cases. The state can handle that. And we have threats, we have obvious threats to our democracy. We see that in terms of election denial and so on. But there's more insidious threats that are behind the surface, that when I refer to the dark abyss. And if we're not going to have the government's fortitude or commitment to doing that, then what's its purpose? Aren't I walking into a tax audit now?
Questions, sorry.
What?
What is your reaction to the news reports in the past few months that the prosecutors recommended against charging Congressman Gaetz? And also, when was the last time that your client spoke with federal investigators regarding count 1, the sex trafficking investigation?
Okay, so your first question is, I have not received any information concerning that article that I think it was in the Washington Post. So I don't have any information either way. In terms of, if I can rephrase your question, when's the last time Joe? No, I got it. Let me rephrase it so I can give you an honest answer. If you don't mind, I just want to be, the way you phrase it, when's the last time Mr. Greenberg communicated to the government, either directly or through counsel, about investigations? That's the way to answer. Fairly recently, within the last 3 months.
New information?
What?
New information that he's provided in the last few months?
Well, it's ongoing information. It's consistent with other information he's provided. He's on the cooperation train, and once you get on that cooperation train, there's only one path. I'm mixing metaphors.
Between the cooperation chain and
The train.
the train and the evidence that you're saying that you have seen.
Yeah.
Are you shocked that Gaetz hasn't been arrested yet?
I'm shocked. But I am disappointed by a number of prosecutions that haven't been brought.
Including that one?
Pardon?
Including that one?
Let me think about how I'm going to answer that. I think there's a number of prosecutions that can be brought in the area of the SBA fraud, the bribery and kickbacks, election fraud, and the sex cases. That's all you're going to get from me. I know you're going to ask it a third time in a different way, but so it was pretty evasive. I apologize. But any other questions or?
You've been doing this a long time.
Uh-huh.
How will you remember your handling of this case and this case in general?
Oh, like I said, I think, I came in, I'll be honest, I inherited a mess, a real mess. I mean, all the charges were already out there in stone, and the liability was clear. It wasn't a triable case. And so, he was looking at 30 years or in excess of 30 years. And I have, for the last 20 months, in a lot of different ways, mitigated the damage. And I think I'm very, in a Buddhist sense, I take great pride in the process and the effort I put in. I was especially, I think that was confirmed by the judge's, who's a great judge, the judge's comments about thinking that the guidelines that we arrived at were too low. So that's part of a job of any good attorney to try to narrow the playing field, limit the playing field. So what that tells me is that I saved him a great big deal of time. On the other hand, I'm never happy with prison sentences, and but that's the reality, and that's a result of his conduct. And so, in the end, it was a just sentence. I tend to think that maybe the judge, in a different context, without the 5K, would have gone a hell of a lot higher. It's all about minimizing damage. Is there any other questions? One more, sir. Yes.
Seeking arrangements have any culpability in this, in terms of misrepresenting the age and not?
I'm sorry?
Seeking arrangements, the website. Do they have any culpability in misrepresenting the age, not vetting?
I don't know. That's more of a civil question. But I mean, obviously, when you go on the website, it says that the escorts are over 18, and you have to be over 18 to enter the escort, to enter the website. Excuse me. So I don't know what kind of process they go through to verify. It doesn't seem like they did. I don't know. So, but it's a strict liability offense. That's the problem, and it's going to have huge consequences for him. And it's not one of the problems I struggle with is it's not a typical sex offense, and that under the old statute that would have been a very defensible case, and yet that's the one that carries the most significant consequences. So it's kind of a little irrational.
Can you clarify the restitution?
Restitution?
For there was mention that he still owed $400K to the SBA.
He owes the SBA loans. He took 3 loans out, and that was one of the problems in this case. And before I was his lawyer, after he had his initial appearance, he took out 3 SBA loans, fraudulent loans. So that was kind of a sticking point for the court.
That's still outstanding, the 400K.
The 400K, yeah. It's like 430 something, 440, something like that.
But he's square with the county of Seminole.
He's completely square with the county.
What was that 109 number?
The 109 was early on in the case. There was the sale of his residence, and I had reached out to the government while he was in custody to get their approval of the sale, rather than having a government sale, with the idea that the money would go towards restitution. His share of the proceeds would go, and that's what happened.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's what the government was referring to.
One last question. Is there any sense of an appeal that you guys are looking for?
No. No. I mean, look, I never... first of all, he has a plea agreement that limits his right to appeal, and one of the conditions is as long as the sentence is within the guidelines, he doesn't have a right to appeal. Second, in my time as a practitioner, I don't think criminal defendants fare too well in the 11th Circuit. Sometimes there's no appellate issues. That's really the bottom line. The judge was reasoned, he was deliberate, he was fair, he applied the guidelines correctly. If he had gone outside the guidelines, then he could have appealed. So, and even then, his chances on appeal wouldn't be great, because the 11th Circuit has routinely upheld sentences, upward variances in cases. And I think in this case, the facts lent itself to an upward variance, which I, strived and sweated and toiled to keep from happening.
What was Joel's reaction to the sentencing?
He was appreciative of the amount of work I did. He was, without getting into client confidences, there was, a concern that the judge would go above the guidelines. So that statement, he wrote it out, and I think it genuinely showed his remorse. So I was pleased with that. Usually I have to tweak a client statement. I did in his case. So there's genuine remorse there. And I think there's some clarity after 20 months. And he's on the right medication now, or he's off. Let me paraphrase that. He's off the wrong medication, So that's a key factor.